Hi, everyone. This is Ariela Halevi, and welcome to the Wildflower Mystic Podcast. So, something that I like to talk about and actually form and base my work on is this phrase, as above, so below. And so, if you've worked with me, if you know me, that is like the most common phrase I use. And I really believe in the idea that our lives matter to our ancestors and our recent loved ones on the other side. And their lives on the other side, their souls also matter to us. And so there's this beautiful synergistic relationship between us being in these earthly human bodies and them being in their soul bodies. Now, this can be most recent loved ones that have passed, but it also can be long ancient ancestors that have passed thousands of years ago that we don't know who they are, but we are connected and we are always connected. And so with that idea, today we're going to go with this theme. How do we affect them and how do they affect us? And so my guest, Dani McCauley, is not only a beautiful human and beautiful soul, she is one of my dear clients, one of my dear friends, and she has had a beautiful yet difficult story. And she's going to talk to us today, and we're going to have this beautiful conversation about her experience of losing not just one, but two very, very dear people in her life, and how she affected change in her life and also in their lives. So, welcome, Dani. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm really happy to be here, Ariela. It means a
Yeah.
lot. It
Thank
means a lot.
Thank you. So I thought we would just start out kind of introduce yourself, tell me who you are. Let's talk about why you came to me, what losses you've had, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So, once again, I'm Dani McCauley. I am a mom of two boys and a wife. And in the last few years, actually coming up on 5 years, everything about my life has changed. I am like I said, the mom of two boys. My oldest, Sean, and my youngest is Connor. And when Sean was 10 months old, Sean was diagnosed with an atypical teratoid rhabdoid brain tumor, which was a fatal diagnosis. He had something like a 2% prognosis of survival beyond 6 months. They told us to take him home, make him comfortable. They didn't have anything for him because it was such an aggressive kind of cancer. And this was the first exercise for me in grief because the day my son was born was the day we had to grieve the idea that we were going to be a normal family, whatever normal is. But that day was the beginning of me understanding my life wasn't going to be the life I anticipated, it was going to be the life I had. And so began my grief journey, actually, in some respects, and my mental health journey when Sean was diagnosed. And I couldn't just fold up and go home. The doctor says, take him home, make him comfortable. And I said, I can live with the notion that he does not live, but I can't live with the notion that I don't try. And so we ended up finding a doctor in Boston. We sold our home, moved to Boston for experimental therapy. And Sean lived 20 and a half beautiful years. That is 20 years beyond what anybody expected. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Sean's life was complicated. He, during his first brain surgery, had a stroke, and that stroke caused significant cognitive and neurological disabilities. Had profound cerebral palsy. He was non-ambulatory, nonverbal, G-tube fed most of his life. On paper, sounds like the most tragic story. But to know Sean actually was not tragic at all. Sean never spoke a word in his life, but he played the piano. And when I say played the piano, I mean played the piano. Like not something you can teach to somebody who's never spoken a word. If I put on Mozart, he would play complex chords, modulations, all kinds of things. Music was his language. And me, as a professionally trained singer, younger in my life, music was the way in which Sean and I communicated. So Sean had all these profound special needs and challenges throughout his life. My husband, John, was a firefighter. And when Sean was diagnosed, we decided we knew one of us was going to need to stay home to be the primary caregiver for complex kiddo. And it made the most sense that it was John. And he was a breathtaking caregiver. He was destined for it. It was almost as if his purpose became very, very sharply clear when Sean was diagnosed. And he rose to the occasion of being Sean's number one caregiver. And it was beautiful. So, went through all sorts of complicated things with our lives, challenges in the journey of having a special needs kiddo. We had another son, Connor, who turned our family from a cancer family into a family, which was a magnificent thing. And in June, 5 years ago today, thereabouts, Sean's cancer was re-diagnosed and it came back. And we were at the Children's Hospital of Colorado again. And it was 5 years ago today. I was looking at one of my memories, and it's actually today was the day 5 years ago that we discovered that his cancer had returned. And because we had thrown everything we could in experimental therapies at Sean's diagnosis, at the time of diagnosis 20 years before, we knew there was nothing else that we could try. He had had as much radiation as he could have had. He had had a stem cell transplant, chemo, high dose chemo, you name it, he had had it. And so we knew that that meant his time on this earth was coming to an end. And so about 5 years ago today, we were getting ready to bring our son home for hospice. It's brutal to think about. It's a lot. And Sean came home and we had hospice at home. And Sean passed away on July 11th of 2020 at the exact age of 20 and a half. And I don't know about you, but I believe in some interesting uh, things that happen in our lives. So Sean was born on 1/11. Connor, my younger son, was born on 11/1.
Wow, I didn't
My
know that.
husband asked me to marry him on 7/11, and Sean died on 7/11.
Wow. Ooh.
A lot of 11s in my life. At the exact age of 20 and a half. Um, and I will tell you that that began my grief journey in what I feel like is a different way. Obviously, living with something you didn't expect has its own grieving journeys. I often talk to friends who've had a divorce or major illness, and your life doesn't turn out the way you think it's going to. You have to have some process of grief in which to get that, to process that. And so this was my first real endeavor with what I think is ultimate loss, like it's gone kind of loss. And I don't know why, but I felt, and I remember saying to my husband at the time, I need to write about this. I think I need to write the story of Sean's life and death. And I don't know why, I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I need to start. It was mostly therapeutic and cathartic for me to write about it initially, and was working on it, kind of as a side project. I have a full-time professional career, and I was participating in traditional grief counseling. And about 2 years after Sean died, the summer of 2022, I was saying to my grief counselor, I think I'm doing decent. I feel pretty good. And my husband got sick. And my husband got pneumonia, but I could not begin to tell people that he died of pneumonia. He died of a broken heart. He wasn't able to find purpose after Sean's death. He walked the carpet or the routine in our house as if Sean was still with us. And he was really stuck. We both had our own grief counselors, because I think it's really important in grief that you really center in on what your journey is, because they're so different person to person how people grieve. And in September of 2022, John was hospitalized for pneumonia and a pleural effusion on his left lung and spent 44 days in the hospital, and he died on November 10th, which is 1/11 backwards, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
So there's something there. I think it was kind of initially I thought he was going to die on 11/11. My brother and I joked and said, wow, that's really trippy. And then when he died on 11/10, one of my best friends said, oh, but Dani, that is 11. That is 111 backwards.
Wow.
So I had kind of a moment. So
Yeah.
I obviously did not stop my grief counseling because there I was in the middle of another round. And I'll be honest, I was kind of in shock. I don't know that I was really, that's a lot of loss in 2 years. And my family went from being one description of a family to something totally different. And my youngest son was in college. So I was going from a family of four to just being me alone. And so I worked through grief counseling. I actually sold my home. I moved to New York for 6 months. I just needed a change of scenery. I needed to shake up who I was and what I was and not have all these paradigms of who I was supposed to be. And did that, came back, and I said to my grief counselor, I think I need to talk to John. And I don't know what that even means. This isn't something I was familiar with, but I need to talk to somebody who can help me talk to John. And she made a referral, and she made a referral to you. And our first session, we came together. It was February of 2024. And we met in person. We obviously meet a lot via Zoom, but we met in person. And like, I really, I can't reiterate enough. I didn't know what I was choosing. I didn't know what this journey was even about. I just knew that I had a lot of unspoken things I wanted to talk to my husband about. And if there was any chance, I mean, any chance at all, that I could talk to Sean, who I'd never had words with because that wasn't his language, if there was any chance I could talk to him, I knew I wanted to try. And so the first session we had, very, very quickly, it went from being something other people talk about, experience, to something very real for me immediately. In that we connected, you helped me connect myself to John that very first session. And he said a lot of things to me that day. The thing he said that was the most profound was, don't be John's widow, be Dani. And I feel like in so many ways, wow, I'm super emotional today to talk about this, but in so many ways, he was giving me permission to allow myself permission to thrive. And that me thriving was an indicator of my love for him and not an indicator of something that in my own head, the script I had was that the world would judge that meant I didn't love him a lot if I thrived. And so in some way, me not doing okay was supposed to honor his death. And in our first session, what became very clear was that to honor him would be to live well and to thrive.
I love that.
And I left that session that day, and I still remember it like it was yesterday because I texted you later that night and I said, okay, this is really weird. But for some reason, as I left your office and I'm driving home, my eyesight was better. Like, I wear glasses. I have a pretty poor, a bad astigmatism, and I have got terrible vision. But I was driving home, and the street signs were clear. Everything was as if somehow I went from needing glasses to not needing glasses. And I was like, this is super weird. Am I imagining this? And I remember us having a really funny chat, which is probably the moment when I knew we wouldn't just have a working relationship. We probably would be friends because of how you reacted. And by the way, the next morning I woke up and my eyesight was back to normal. But there was something about me leaving your office and driving out into the world that I felt like I saw the world clearer. And that made me want more. And that moment of having permission from John very directly to say, be Dani, don't be John's widow. It is a part of you, but it's not all of you. It's not only who you are. And so we began this journey. So in the last year and a half, thereabouts, we've been working regularly. You have taught me how to self-guided meditate, to find that place. I liken it to one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced It is the most colorful, um, profound journey where, because of that first session in the last year, I have chosen me and I have allowed myself to thrive in the midst of really profound loss. I have been on a health journey. So I think about that release and that permission didn't just allow me to give myself permission to heal my mental well being, but I feel like it's been a whole person journey, whole person health, my physical, my mental, my spiritual. All of those things together have really kind of flourished. I finished the book.
Mhm.
I didn't know it at the time, but the book I thought was about Sean. It's not. It's about more than that. It's about me. It's about John. It's about the journey. It's about the lessons of resilience. And ultimately, that you choose. You choose how you're going to react. You don't necessarily choose what happens to you, but you do choose how you react. And so when I think about what work you and I have done together, and I call it work because it really requires this massive leap of faith into the process and this massive commitment to believing, why not this?
Right.
And the more I have leaped, the more I've connected. And what's amazing is at the beginning, it was about these moments where I was reaching out for him or reaching out for Sean. And oh, by the way, I've talked to Sean
Mhm.
and it's amazing. His voice sounded nothing like what I thought it would,
Mhm.
but I have been able to connect to them. And as we've done this in the last year, no longer is it something where I am having to work to do my call to them.
Mhm.
I swear, every single day they're with me now. Like I feel them, their presence sitting, they're with us right now. They are with me in this next chapter. And something you said to me on our first session is, yes, I can help you talk to them, but it's not necessarily about that. It's about finding a way to have them join you in this next chapter and have them with you in a different form, but with you. And I feel them with me every single day now. I wake up, I dream about them more. I wake up and something will happen and I can hear John making a joke. I'm dating as a widow for the first time in 27 years. And John will sometimes send me messages about some of the guys I've dated. That's not it, Dani. So it just, they're there. They're with me all the time.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for it's very vulnerable, right? And to share such profound loss is not easy to do on a podcast, right? And in general, some people are very private about their grief, and I think something so beautiful about you is that you're willing to be open and share and not make grief something that you do in hiding, and that it's something that is it does open doors that we didn't really know needed to be open,
Yeah,
and that every single person, every one of us has either gone through or will go through loss and grief. It's part of the human
it's
experience.
universal.
Right. It's something that we all share, but we all have different paths to it. And I think one thing that you said is really, really important. Actually, many things, but one of the things that stuck out with me is, in the beginning, it was just like communication with. And I think what morphed, if I can say this with you, is that it became the initial shock of like, whoa, I can do this. And then it became this amazing synergistic pathway between you here and them on the other side. It became this dance in just a different form that helped all of you heal. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to try this and see if this works, or I'm going to get messages and answers. It was more of like, it felt to me like you were on this like different journey and a healing path. So as you opened to this, they opened more. The veil became much thinner.
Totally. I still, something that comes to mind is one of the sessions you and I had. And it was very clear that John wanted to talk to me. And in that session, John came and he was crying. He said, "Can you forgive me?" And the answer was, "Yes, I can forgive you." he said to me in this session, I know I could have found another purpose, but I just didn't want to. And me giving him forgiveness in this session, I believe in every fiber of my being, helped him. And I believe he and I are dancing together in this new way in entirety because of this process. Like I'm clear he knows I'm talking to him. And I'm clear I know he's talking to me. And it doesn't require as much like focus anymore because I've let go of this idea that like you've let go of the paradigms of how can this be? How is this even rational or possible? But I would argue for somebody who is religious, it's the same. You have to have that leap of faith. And for me, the leap of faith was into this spiritual awakening. And I believe completely because I have seen witness to them being a part. John plays practical jokes on me. Like we are laughing. I went on a date with somebody and I came home and I woke up in the morning and all that it kept reiterating was him laughing, going, he ain't it. He's
Mhm.
not it.
Right.
Like there's a humor to be had about this. And I feel like he's rooting me on.
Mhm. Absolutely. I also want to touch on this interesting thing that happened during our sessions was the feeling that actually you and I both had, because I think you and I worked so well together, and and that leap of faith that you took, that jump, it just opened so many avenues and doors within you. And what we found, which was so interesting, was that Sean, so there's different levels of where people land, and in Kabbalah it's called four worlds. And we as humans go through these levels of experiences and awarenesses if we choose to on this earth. And then the soul does that when it dies. And we both felt this energy of Sean being almost like angelic, like almost like there are no words for Sean because it's so majestic. And whenever I tap, I can feel it now. Like whenever we tap into Sean, it's almost like all white. It's like wings and it's white and it's this different
The
level of the soul.
purest,
Purity.
what I would use to describe Sean, and I did while he was on this earth, and he was the purest soul I think I've ever known. And I truly believe he chose us. I
Mhm.
believe I was chosen by Sean for this journey. And what I needed to learn in my journey was a big part was because I was chosen by Sean.
Yeah, it's so amazing the synergistic ways in which we live our lives, and then how we die, and then how we live on the other side. And that's what was so beautiful, is because Sean was so clearly an earth angel here when he was in his body, which wasn't even, it was just like this presence, right? Is what you and I had felt. And especially, this being with him for 20 years was like almost like this body wasn't for him, but his soul was just flying. And that's what we always felt and feel on the other side. And John was like at a different level. He was much more communicative in a like dance,
Traditional sense.
like in a more verbal, feeling way. And Sean was very different energy. And I just think it's so interesting, the similarities between how we live, how we die, and how we move past that. And
Yeah.
I think even with you, the openness and the willingness to go to different levels of your own soul here is is so fascinating, and also so brave and so full of trust and faith.
I really do believe that this is like I think purpose is everything. And when Sean was diagnosed, John got a purpose and I got a purpose. John's purpose was to be his number one caregiver. My purpose was to be his medical, like chief medical officer. So I was the one who did all the advocacy and research and then once he survived it, the doctors would say to us, well, we don't want to give you false hope. He's still only got a 2% chance of living, which is really crappy thing to say, but the truth. And my purpose was about how can I prove them wrong? And I did. It
Yeah.
was really, really pretty cool. And then after Sean was about a year or two after he survived the cancer, and we're looking at, and John and I are kind of holding our breath, saying, "What's next?" And we knew we wanted to have another child, and so we had Sean's younger brother Connor, and we knew we had to get back to it. But one of the things that always sort of struck me was this has to have happened for a reason. I didn't know what that meant, but I decided to start a nonprofit, a pediatric oncology nonprofit, because I wanted to know that if Sean did die, it wouldn't be for nothing. And at that time, they still said, well, he probably won't live a year or two. Every MRI was like a lease extension. We never called it. We never felt like we had the right to expect anything other than an extension of the time we had the right to hope for. And we started the nonprofit because I wanted to know there was a reason why. And eventually, that nonprofit grew to the extent that as Sean got older and his needs got more complicated, and I couldn't focus on a nonprofit as much as we had more to do internally with the family, we endowed that nonprofit to Children's Hospital of Colorado. So Sean's legacy, long beyond Dani McCauley on this earth, or John McCauley on this earth, or even Sean McCauley on this earth, his legacy is forever etched in an endowment that helps families when their kiddo is diagnosed with pediatric cancer. And to me, that feels purposeful. But it was probably one of my earliest experiences of understanding that everything has a reason and a meaning. It's the reason and meaning you give it, but everything has a reason. And so I do believe as Sean died, and then as John died, I've had greater clarity about what's my purpose. And as I meet people that are also grieving, and guess what? All of us are grieving, pretty much a universal language. We've all lost someone that we love dearly. I've come to appreciate, I think some of my purpose is helping people talk about their lost loves
Mhm.
and
Yeah, so go ahead.
keeping their souls alive by talking about them. I believe in every ounce of my being that John and Sean's souls are alive, because the more I say their names, the less I think about how they died, the more I think about how they lived. And so when I talk about my husband, who was the most inappropriate jokester you could have ever met in your life, he was so inappropriate in the best of ways. But me talking about that's a better memory than the day he died in a hospital. That's not a great memory. It is a great memory? His humor. It's a great memory? Sean playing the piano. That was something to behold, not how he took his last breath.
Right. I love how you describe, I mean, what you're saying is like there is purpose to your life
And my loss.
and your loss, and there was purpose during the entire struggle and life of living with a child with such severe disabilities and cancer. There was
Yeah.
purpose in John's life, and
Yeah.
it does come into like discussion of like the purpose of like the soul contracts and the agreements that you all have together, and like how that doesn't end, right? And as they transition to the other side, there is still this agreement and this dance and this contract. And I do what I love about you, Dani, is that you take what life has given you and you decide that there's purpose in it, even though it hurts, and you make your life worth living. And even with the losses and that you've had and incurred, there still is so much purpose and agreements and contracts with your loved ones, even though there's two on the other side and there's such profound losses. It has always felt to me that this term "as above, so below" is still alive today, even though the physical bodies of them are not here. There is still this like cohesive relationship in everything that you do. So tell us a little bit about like what that means to you now. I know you've touched on, you've taken care of your body physically and really opened up to this path of truth or of trust. What does that mean when they're on the other side and you're here? How do you move through that? And what is your purpose now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have a professional job. I have a career, a pretty good career. And what it has meant is that I don't. So one thing that happened, and it happened before Sean died, before John died, when I was about 45, I decided I needed to choose me. You know, we as young women and then growing women are conditioned to please others, to worry about what others think. And so about the age 45, I let go of this notion that I needed to be something for somebody else. I needed to be something for myself. And so the people pleaser in me, and so I'm 56, proudly 56 today. Um, and, since John and Sean have passed, what I think about today about who I am, one, I'm absolutely clear I'm going to publish this book. I'm absolutely clear I am supposed to talk about purpose with others. And I've done a couple of keynote speeches for corporations that I work with that have asked me to talk about it and talk about my journey. But I believe there is this next chapter for me is an unapologetic chapter where I do exactly what I need to do. So you should know I'm a poker player. I'm a really good poker player. And I'm actually taking this call today from Las Vegas because I'm here for the summer playing poker. That's something I choose. If you were to have asked me that question 15 years ago, I would never have told anybody that out loud because somehow I felt like if you knew that about me, you would judge. And I think the real indicator of where I'm at today is it's okay, let them judge. It's not about me. What you think of me is none of my business. What I think of me is my business. And so I am living my life, which includes this book that I'm going to publish, which includes doing more speaking, creating more of a community for people who have lost loves, in finding ways in which to honor and speak their names because speaking their names keeps their soul alive. And I think in some ways I've been saying that since before you and I started working together. And I think what I didn't realize is saying their names is a calling to them in many ways. Before you and I began the formal work and me understanding how to tap in,
Right,
I was seeking a tap in.
right,
And now I understand that the first step, whether somebody believes in this kind of work or they believe in a traditional religious work or group therapy or whatever the method is, there is
right,
a way to connect. And there is a way in which I think the thing that I have given myself permission the most since that day is you do not have to be hurting to honor your loss.
right.
So I believed at the beginning of our journey, or at the beginning of my loss, more the loss of John than Sean, that if I laughed, that would be bad.
Mm.
Or that if I felt good, I remember the first time I danced. I was in a store with my mom and they had one of my favorite songs came on the radio and I started dancing. And about 10 seconds in, I burst into tears. Not because I was embarrassed, but because I didn't know I would ever want to dance again.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. I remember when you and I did a day retreat together, and you had this epiphany, and I don't remember all the details, but you had this epiphany of what if I am the one, right? What if even though I've had these losses and I've gone through so much, what if truly I am the one? And I think what the one meant and means is even though I've gone through these earthly challenges, what if there's a spark of, for lack of better terms, like what if there's a spark of the divine that lives within me that wants me to breathe, live, dance, and do my best Dani, right? Or my best Ariela.
Mhm.
Like, what if that spark is in there, even though I've had these losses. And for me to pack it up, right? To pack it up and just and not live your life truly on purpose would be denying the spark that has been given to you, the gift and the spark. And I remember that was such this like this epiphany.
I remember saying to you, "Am I the one?" And really, at the time, the question was, I'd written this book, and does anybody want to hear what I have to say? Am I the one that should talk about this? Like, is it self important that I think I'm the one? Like, I had all these doubts. And I left that day crystal clear. I am the one to tell this story. whoever reads it, whoever does or does not get something out of it is not the point, but I'm the one.
Right.
I am the one. And that, from that day, really powerful.
And that's also the day that that turning point, which I was, able to witness in you, where it
Yeah.
wasn't a question, it was like, oh, it was like this full body recognition that,
I am the one.
right? And from that day, what I saw was like not only your light bulb turn on, but this is where we affect change on all levels, because I could feel your ancestors and your and Sean and John, I could feel that light bulb get brighter in them as well, because we
And
all.
a more profound, prolific connection
Yes.
to them. The moment that I found that, the connection became easier.
Yes. So isn't that interesting? You decide that you are the one, and all of the sudden, because I think a lot of people have a hard time with like, oh, I don't have a connection to my loved ones. I'm just a person. I'm just a normal person. And I think we all have connection to our ancestors, but you have to decide that you are the one to do that. And you are
Yeah.
the one to put your light switch on. And that
Yeah.
is what they all want, right? Whether they're 1,000 years old, 10 years gone, or 1 year gone, they all want us to step into that. They need us. Like Sean and John, they needed you to say, oh, I am the one, just like now John knows on the other side that he is the one as well. Sean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sean always knew that.
Well, and what's crazy, and this is kind of a bizarre sort of twist on that. Since last summer, since we did that ritual, the number of people that say to me, Dani, you are glowing. Like you have an aura. Something has changed in you and you have like a glow around you. And I really believe that glow is it.
Yeah. It's, I am the one.
I am the one. And I stepped into my light.
You did. And with such profound loss behind you, right? To say, I am the one, just like dancing in the store.
Yeah.
But I think that it's possible for anyone to say that at any time. We just have to stay.
Yeah.
Like, it's so amazing to watch you say that and then not look back, right? I literally have not felt you look back since that day
Well,
that we.
because you know why? Because they're actually, I don't feel the need to say, I wish John would have seen me like this. He does see me like this. He's here. So, like, I don't feel like, wow, it's a shame I wasn't all this then. I was exactly where I was supposed to be at the exact moment I was at. And I do feel that John and Sean are sitting here with me celebrating this version of myself. And I think like every time I talk about John and I tell a funny story, like at a poker table or whatever, I think he's like proud.
Mhm.
He's like, yeah, that was me.
Right.
Like, I think he's proud. And I think anybody, not one person who ever met Sean, and because remember, he wasn't verbal, really on paper, pretty tragic. But if you met him, it would be impossible not to be forever changed by meeting my son, Sean. He was that kind of special human. And so I feel like the luckiest person on the earth that I got to be his mom.
Right.
Like
Right.
he was magical and he's still sprinkling magic on me.
And I think because you opened the doors to your own magic, Sean is
Yeah.
able to sprinkle that magic into you even more.
Yeah.
It, and I also, what I'm hearing from you, I feel like we're in a session. What I'm
Yeah.
hearing is like this whole body yes. And you decided that when you were 45, right? Making that turn was a decision a
Yeah.
long time ago. But what I've seen just witnessing you is when, like, how many times are we saying no to our bodies and our spirit and our emotional and energetic selves? And when we find, and you said it, as women, we often say no because we're ingrained to take care of others. And
Or
I
what we should do.
do,
Shoulda. The
right?
shoulda.
The shoulds, right?
Yeah.
And I think you saying yes to yourself, even during that whole period of time, and the yeses look different at different stages of our lives, right? And but like what I see is as you say yes to all levels of you, the universe, source, God, divine responds back to you. And so, yes, you've had these losses, and then you said, I am the one. And now what I see is like the gold dust, right? Like the yes to my body, yes to these experiences. It's like following when things come to you and you say yes, the doors open more, the doors open more. And
Yeah.
I just think it's a profound, like, you're kind of a miracle because a lot of people that have such hard losses, they and there's no judgment, but it's hard to say yes to themselves. And I think this is a wake-up call for all of us to say yes to all levels of us. Putting ourselves before everybody else isn't selfish.
Well, and this idea that, you know, those losses, so I think the most important thing that I would want someone to understand is that me thriving means I talk more about them. So
Right.
it's not as if I've tucked it into this secret, like my sadness. And don't get me wrong, I have crying days just as well as I just still. But, you saw me do that today. But um, me talking about them makes them more present in my life. So I have found a way in which their loss is more a part of my life. Their lives and deaths are more a part of my lives than they were before. And I think we're conditioned not to talk about grief and not to talk about our lost loved ones. People want you to get through it or get over it, whatever that even means. And for the first few times I do it with anybody, it makes people a little uncomfortable that I say John's name all the time, and they don't know how to respond. And I think it's part of my job is to teach them how to respond. Tell me a
Absolutely.
story. And
Right.
so one of the speeches I gave at my company when I came back to work after John died is, if I cry, it's actually a gift. It's a sign that they mattered,
Right.
that somebody mattered. So I think tears are really good. I think being able to talk about them is really good. And the more I say their names, the easier it gets to smile when I say it.
Love that. And just to conclude, to kind of wrap everything up, like what I think you're describing is as above, so below. What you said is the more I say yes to me, the more I trust and have faith that the veil is thin and I affect change through this lifetime and their life. The closer they are to you, the more you say their name, the more you live and the more they live, right? Just in a different form. And so ultimately, this idea of as above, so below is for all of us, because as we go through this lifetime, we see that the veil is so much thinner than we've ever known. And so it's a deep prayer. And thank you, Dani, for coming on and being so expressive and so authentically you, which you always are, which I love. Um, but yeah, anybody who is struggling with this is this deep prayer that you choose you, and that as above, so below, and that we affect change on all levels. And you never know what happens when you say yes to yourself.
And that ultimately honors your losses.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So thank you again. And I'm sure we're going to have you on again because this is just so, we could go
Oh,
on
I
and
have
on.
lots to say. I have
Yeah.
lots to say.
Absolutely. So if you have tuned in and you like what you've heard, please join us. We have a once a month on Monday, the first Monday of every month, we have a online Zoom call where it's a wonderful group of women that come together for a shamanic journey, an energy teaching of the month, and also your chance to ask for intuitive guidance. And it's just such a sweet group where everybody grows with each other. In addition, join me once a month in Denver, in Colorado, for our wildflower women's circles that are in person, sometimes in the mountains, sometimes in Denver, where we explore all of these things and more, but especially grow in community. So thank you everybody so much, and we will see each other soon.